Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guest here today, well, first of all, everyone should recognize our guest, Rose Black. She's back on the podcast again, coming to us from the land down under that is Australia. So I'm going to even tell a little story before we get started here. So we were supposed to do this podcast on Friday at 9 or 11 a.m. her time. I totally forgot that in Australia, they are hours ahead of us, not hours behind us. So this is currently Thursday night my time, and I get a text from her saying, "Hey, are we on for the podcast?" Took me about half a minute to say, "Oh crap, that's right, the whole Australian thing." So that just happens when you're dealing with guests on a totally other continent on the opposite side of the world. But Rose, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast again. I really, really appreciate it.
It's great to be here. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Well, obviously the coronavirus, and hey, this might be the one time where I actually have better weather than you, just because it's 9 o'clock at night right now. So it's decent weather. But what's the weather like today in Australia where you're at?
We're in winter, but it's a beautiful sunny day, and I'm in my office, which is at the front of my house. So I've got this beautiful sun stream coming in. I'm loving it. Life is good. It's really warm inside my house. It's probably about 14 degrees Celsius or around that outside. Maybe it might be creeping up to about 19 today. So it's a pretty nice day.
So, being that I am an American, we are one of two countries that were never taught how to do Celsius, so I have no idea how to calculate that. But I think it's warmer. But I gotta remind everyone that you do not know a real winter until you've been to Minnesota, where once it reaches -40, I mean, all bets are off. No matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But before we get into that, because I mean, that's a whole podcast that I'm planning out in and of itself, of just winter weather stories, and that's going to be like a 15-hour long podcast, because I could go on, for hours and hours about that. So I looked it up, and it was last June that we last talked. So it's been over a year, and you're a pro now. But other than that, I mean, what have you been up to in the last year since we last chatted?
Wow, I was looking at our last conversation as well, and yeah, so much has happened since then. So yeah, had a few more shows after that time, and managed to go into the Australian Arnold Classic, which was in March last year, so March 2019, and that's where I got my pro card. And after that, did a few some photo shoots and different things. Working, of course, like just running my online business. So I have an online PT business now, which is going really, really well, and I'm really loving doing that. So yeah, things have been going really well.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And what was that feeling like when they announced your name and you realized, oh my God, I'm a pro now on that stage?
Oh my God. So I'll tell a little bit of a story, I guess, about my journey to that place, because I started competing about 6-7 years ago. So my first ever show was in 2013, and I was in a league called the IMBA, and it was a league where all of the competitors were tested. So it was a natural federation. It was, I guess, a smaller scale of federation. And then even at that point, it was always my dream to then cross over to the IFBB, to step up to the IFBB, which is the biggest league in the world, and to one day become a pro. And it just seemed like such a pie in the sky idea. I guess at that stage, did not believe that it would ever come true. But I was striving for it. Every single workout, it was in my mind, and it was like, okay, I'm just going to keep working and trying and training and just seeing if this is going to come true. And so then I crossed to the IFBB. It was late 2015. I'd actually become a pro with the IMBA / PNBA. Went to my first ever IFBB show, which was the Amateur Olympia, and it was on the Gold Coast. And I actually placed second to the pro card winner there. So I kind of knew at that point, I was like, okay, I did a show the year before as a novice in the IFBB, and I actually won that show. That was at the Arnold Classic in 2014. So I kind of knew, I was like, okay, I've got some potential in this sport. And let's just give it a go. So that was the year that I decided. After I got my pro card, I reluctantly handed that card back over and said, thank you so much, but I'm going to now cross to the IFBB, and that was the future from there. So I basically competed back to back, season A, season B. It was a really tough few years. Not a lot of time off, not a lot of time to do an off season, and I just hammered it. Just got my name out there, just tried to be seen, tried to improve every show and bring a better package. And eventually I did get noticed, and then my dreams and my luck just turned out last year in March 2019. I'd been so close the last couple of years, second to the pro card winner or second in my height class, and it always felt like it was just just so close yet so far. And that feeling was I just broke down on stage. I could not believe it. And I actually was trying to pose when I was announced, and I walked out. I'll have to share this on my Instagram, but I walked out onto stage, and I'm trying to pose to get the photo and the photographers are going, pose with your trophy. And I just couldn't get myself together. I was like so shaking, and I just kept like trying to hold the pose, but then I would drop my arms, and I watch it back now and it's so embarrassing to watch back, but I was just so overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I can't imagine what that feels like. And when you're that depleted, do any tears actually come out when you're crying, or is it just basically dry tears?
Yeah, not on stage. They didn't come out then. I was so dehydrated, actually. That was probably the most dehydrated I've ever been on stage. I was super dry, which was great. It was great for my conditioning, but I don't think I've ever been as dry as that before. So I remember walking off stage and being like, because I was trying to speak to people, and like I had no moisture in my mouth to speak to anyone. I was like, hi guys.
Well, and for anyone that isn't aware, when she gets stage ready, she has some of the best abs that we've seen on this podcast. So anytime that you've either laughing or crying, they're not good for your stomach then, because if it's already that like it's already that lean, that just must be a tremendous thing to go through. But it's just so great that you won your pro card. And honestly, if we were the last time that we talked, I predicted that you would. So, I'm not going to say that I called it, but I did. So I'll just lay that out there. So, I'm not like I might be the next Nostradamus, who knows, but yeah, that's just so great. And since we last talked before winning that pro card, did you change up your training at all over the last year, or have you done a lot of the same, or what's that been like?
I actually have changed up my training. I'd started to follow a few different people, and the strength and conditioning guy that I train with on a daily basis, he's a natural guy. He's been training himself for like 20 plus years, and his knowledge is amazing, and he's basically taught me everything I know about weights. And so he had started to study posture, and he's actually now like a certified, I think maybe even an expert in postural analysis and posture and things like that. So, and we also started looking at different ways of training without impacting on the joints and different things like that. So my training style has changed a little bit in terms of the exercises that I choose and the variety, I guess. I think, when you're first starting out, you kind of tend to do every exercise known to man, and you're trying to do it all in one session and fit as much in as you can. But then over time, as your knowledge progresses, you realize that there are certain exercises that are just biomechanically superior than others, and there's a lot of time wasting that goes on in the gym. So that's where I've probably changed the most. I've got rid of a bunch of time-wasting exercises. It's very simple now, very, I kind of have my go-to exercises. I get a great pump, and I probably have higher reps now than I used to have. I used to sort of stick to the 8 rep range. Now I can do sets with 20 or 30 reps at the beginning and then progressing downwards, and then maybe pyramiding back up and things like that. So yeah, it's my body's feeling probably the best it's ever felt in terms of recovery because of that style of training. So yeah.
Do you use a lot of time under tension in your workouts now?
On my leg days, yes, we have been, because in my leg days, what had happened was about 2 years ago, I realized that I'd kind of hit a plateau with my squatting, with deadlifting. I realized that I wasn't progressing in the way that I should be. And my legs, I felt like my legs were suffering, and they're kind of a strength for me on stage. So I was like, oh, we need to do something about that. I went and started working with a guy called Will Hunt, and he's a power lifter. And oh my God, the learning again from that, I'm just really lucky. I've got great people around me that can mentor me and I can learn from, and I'm always looking to learn more and study more and do that sort of stuff. So he has had me doing quite a lot of time under tension stuff to perfect my squat again, or to get it back on track, because there was just areas of my squat that were breaking down. And I find that the time under tension, it just really helps you to identify where it is. Where are those weak places in your squat? Like for me, it was around not bracing my abs correctly. Like, so as much as you kind of have admired my abs in the past, they looked good, but they weren't super strong. So now they're much stronger, and I can actually brace and hold my core and keep a tighter squat, which is great.
So her abs have gotten even better, she's trying to tell us, basically. So yeah, my hope in humanity and my faith in humanity is now even more shook than it was before. But yeah, and that's just so great. So would you say that your legs, other than your legs, what would you think is one body part that you've improved on the most since we last talked?
It probably is my abs, actually, because I did lean down for Arnold. I was going to make my pro debut in this March, so March 2020. I was all ready to go. The announcement that it wasn't going to go ahead was made, I think, around 10 days before the show was on. So it was crushing, but I had just pushed, it was the best I've ever looked. I really can say that with hand on heart. And I just didn't even get that many photos because I was so focused. I was so focused on the show and getting it done. And I was just like in the zone every day. And so I didn't take a lot of photos. But I did notice as I was leaning out, my vascularity had really improved. Like I wasn't a super vascular girl in the past, but I noticed, wow, I've really got some great veins coming through, and they were everywhere, all over my abs. And I think just getting to that next stage of leanness too, it was definitely the leanest I'd been. But my abs, for sure, they were a lot squarer, they were thicker. Even when I was kind of just standing without flexing, they were visible. And then my separation through my legs and my glutes as well, my glute hamstring tie-in, which is something that us girls really struggle with. So that was my two major focuses, was my glute hamstring tie-in, and just being able to stand flat and front on and still have my abs be really like strong, visible, and just look good. Because sometimes when you're depleted on stage, your abs can kind of disappear a little bit, or mine can anyway. That's what happens for me. And then the 2 days after, everyone's going, oh my God, your abs look amazing, and they're so deep. But because I'm so depleted on the day of comp, sometimes they kind of go, they disappear a little bit too much. So I wanted to thicken them up. So it happened. I think, we got there and made some really good changes.
Well, here's what you do then. The day that they announce that the show's canceled, you find the nearest mirror, you charge your phone up to 100%, and you take enough photos until your phone either runs out of storage or it loses its battery power.
You don't want to know how many photos I have on my phone. And they're pretty much all of myself.
I'm not gonna lie, I probably have only like 50 or 60 photos on my phone, and that's the phone that I've had for probably like 8 or 9 years. So it's, Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not that photogenic. Well, as you can tell, I'm not the most photogenic person of all time. I have more of a radio voice. Everyone can agree with that. Where I don't have the like. Everyone told me is like you should definitely do radio because you don't have the face for TV, which is one of the meanest
Oh,
things I've ever. Hey, but hey, you live in your and I just laugh at it because I think it's funny. But before we go into depressing Ryan, because that's I do that enough of myself. Basically, I don't need a whole podcast to do that. Why don't we go into? I mean, obviously when it comes to nutrition, we talked about this in the last podcast, but have you mixed up your nutrition at all in the last year as well?
yeah, probably a little bit. I'm carb cycling again now through my off season. So we went through my preps. It's kind of very much like a high fat, high protein, not a lot of carbs, like I guess more of a ketogenic style, but it's not true keto. Um, then I found once I finished my last prep, when I realized the dream was over and the show wasn't going to go ahead, I was like, "Ah." So I then decided, okay, what am I going to do this off season? That's a little bit different. I wanted to grow a tiny bit more, and didn't want to be in, I guess, like in a ketogenic state all the time, because like it is tough. It's quite tough, and I do love my carbs. And I've always kind of managed carbs pretty well. My body type seems to be able to cope with quite a few carbs. I don't feel like I'm insulin sensitive or anything like that. So yeah, started to carb cycle, and I feel like my body's responding really well to that. Yeah, in my off season, I've managed my weight a bit better this off season, and feel like I'm getting like lots of food, but I don't feel like I'm putting the body fat on like I might have in the past. Mm.
So is the plan just take the rest of this year off and just recuperate, or is there a show late in the year that you might be gunning for? What's that story?
Do you know what? I'd love to. I'd love to compete if I could. And I know that there are some pro shows on in America, but there's a travel ban on here in Australia. So we would literally have to, I guess, ask for special permission. And then I would have to quarantine over there and then quarantine when I got back. And that's like at least what, 6 weeks out of your life for just one show. I don't like, and you know, the cost of that as well, like quarantining over there and stuff like that. So I don't think so. And I'm concerned that if this doesn't get under control, that next year Arnold's may not go ahead here in Australia, because not the pro show at least anyway, because we kind of rely on our pros coming over from overseas, because we don't have a huge number of pros here in Australia. So um yeah, it's all a bit up in the air, but like true Rose style, I've always got a plan B. So my plan B has been I'm going to be doing a powerlifting show in September. So I am not a powerlifter. I'll just put that out there straight up. So any powerlifters that watch this show, do not worry. I am definitely not a threat. I am not a strong girl, but I do have a decent deadlift, and I just love the atmosphere of competing with powerlifters. It's a great day.
Well, who knows? You might go to this meet and then discover that this is your true calling. So anyone out there, I mean, buyer beware. Who knows what that's going to be like? But that's just so great. And have you found that to be more fascinating for you, just because the powerlifting lifestyle when it comes to the training is so much more different than bodybuilding, where you're not focusing on the look of it, you're focusing more on the growth of it? Has that just been a great change for you, or what's that adjustment been like?
Yeah, I've loved it. I feel like, well, I train in a powerlifting gym now at least, and I actually train people out of it too. So because I do a bit of PT now, so I find the powerlifting gyms, they're just fantastic because there's no mirrors. It's old school. It's an old shed, with like old school iron weights and just old machines. And I don't know, sometimes I think the older machines are better. They're just ergonomically, I don't know, I think they've definitely got some stuff going on that today's um, machines don't necessarily have. So powerlifting gyms are, they're so much more comfortable to train in. Like, no one cares what you wear, no one cares what you look like. The powerlifting competitions themselves, same thing. I find that maybe because also I'm not super competitive, but everyone's very friendly, very welcoming, and very encouraging, and they don't care, what you look like. And I'm probably a little bit self-conscious, like most girls, wearing short shorts or whatever. But up there, I'm like, oh, I'll rock around in a pair of booty shorts. It doesn't worry me. I don't feel self-conscious or yeah. So I love that lifestyle, and I love the training, and I love watching the other boys and girls that are powerlifting train. Like, it's so inspiring to me because they're so strong.
Well, and honestly, so I was just thinking about asking you about coronavirus, but I totally forgot because before we started recording this podcast, we were talking about events around the world. I totally forgot about the wildfires in Australia, and everyone I think has forgot about that just because. I mean, yeah, that happened in January. Think about a year that we've had so far, where we had the Australian wildfires, then we had coronavirus, then we had God knows what's coming next. But what was that like? I mean, I totally forgot about it, and I would be so angry if it was like at midnight tonight, and I was like, oh crap, I totally forgot to ask her about that. So I'm actually glad that popped into my head. But what was that whole thing like? Because that was just so devastating to watch from all the way over here.
It's really sad to see the country that was burnt, but it's also really inspiring as well because it's everything's growing back now. We've been so lucky. So prior to that the wildfires happening, we'd been experiencing significant drought for a long time. So we were getting it was a shocking time. So around December, January, February, we had significant and long-term drought that had occurred pretty much all over Australia. Everywhere was in drought, especially our area it was so sad. You would go for a drive and there'd be, sheep dying in the paddock and, just everything was dirt. Like, I've never seen the country like that since I've, been a small child. I don't think I've ever seen it like that. There was just no grass, nothing, just dirt. You could see all the rubbish that people had thrown out of their cars along the highways because there was just nothing to hide it anymore. And you just realize how terrible people are for polluting our planet as well. But that's another topic. But so that happened, and then that just gave the perfect environment for these wildfires to start happening. That went through. So our community here in Dubbo, I'm in a place called Dubbo, New South Wales. We didn't have the fires here, but the smoke. We had weeks of just this thick, choking smoke. Everyone had lung issues because it was just, it was so thick and just it just wouldn't escape. Then on top of that, we started getting these horrific dust storms. Like, I've never seen anything like it. They would it was like storms rolling in, but it was dust. So it was terrible. Like, to be truly honest with you, I don't know how some people survived. So many people's homes were burnt. So many people lost everything. Then we had, some amazing celebrities like Celeste Barber who tried to raise money, but it's not going to the people who need it. Like, there's all this court case going on now about that. And so, yeah, like, it's just been a really terrible time. And I think of our poor Prime Minister, who I feel has just done this amazing job because he lost his father before that when it was all happening. His father passed away. He had all of that stuff going on, and they knew Corona was coming. So I can't even imagine what they were going through. But things are getting a lot better. We're so lucky. We've had higher than normal rain levels. And, yeah, things are so green. It's beautiful and green out here at the moment. The rivers are filling up again. Our catchment areas are filling up again. So, yeah, I just pray and hope that can continue. But we've had much higher than normal levels of rain.
Well, I was just going to say, just because I'm a huge fan of the Australian wildlife, and when I heard those statistics of it's like 75% of them in some of those areas were all killed in the fight. Like, I love koala bears, I love kangaroos. I mean, that's just really, really sad, and it really, yeah, just makes you think about a lot of things. But I'm glad that it's gotten taken care of, and it's
those poor babies, the poor, like, koala bears are so beautiful as well, and so are kangaroos. I mean,
Well, just koala
yeah,
bears are just so slow too, so they can't get out of the way. I mean, they're just not that fast. Yeah.
and they're already battling quite a few issues. Like there's a disease that they get, and that really decimates them. Their environments are being obviously cut down more and more every year. So but one thing I will say about Australian people is that everyone champions the cause of koala bears. So there's a lot of people rehabilitating the burnt babies, and there's amazing people out there. The Wires group do some amazing work, and a lot of them were saved, or as many as possible were saved, and they're being rehabilitated. But yeah, a lot of them have passed.
Well, for all the Americans listening, I'll compare it to their way that they treat koalas is like how we treat bald eagles. Where if you hunt or anything a bald eagle in the U.S., it's a federal crime. You're going to jail for a very, very, very long time. But yeah, that's great. But it is not my favorite technically Australian animal. Although my favorite Australian animal does not live technically in Australia. It lives in Tasmania.
Tassie Devil.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
you
yeah.
like the Tassie Devil?
Well,
Yeah.
I was a Looney Tunes fan growing up, and then the Tasmanian Devil, so that kind of got me into it. And then I did a report on them when I was like in second or third grade. And the only thing I remember about them is that those things, like, they take down things that are literally like 20 times their size. And they like if they kill like a horse, I remember part of it too. Like they'll eat the bone too. Like they don't care. They're just vicious little. And like their bite is like the strongest bite for anything their size. Like you don't mess with Tasmanian devils. So and then I saw them at a zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. They had them there, and that was really cool. They're like them and wolverines. I really like just like that whole critter group, but they don't have that there. Which I mean, at least for the coronavirus in Australia, you could always just go to Tasmania. I mean, that's their one little safe haven where it's like a little island that you do. But speaking of coronavirus, just because it's something that's just changed our society for so long, not even so long. I mean, let's be honest, it's only been 4 months, or 5 months now almost, but doesn't it feel like it's been like 10 years? I mean, it's, oh my God. And the first time I heard about Australian coronavirus was when they revealed that Tom Hanks got it when he was in Australia. And that was a whole big deal. So then everyone was like, oh, it's happening in Australia too. But then people realized, hey, Australia's a lot closer to China than the US is. So, but what has it been like for you in Australia dealing with this? Because it's been, for so many other countries, I mean, the U.S., we've just been absolutely, just punched in the face and just knocked out. Where then you look at some other countries where it's barely had any effect on them. But what's it been like in your region in Australia so far?
So, originally, Australian people, we're a very sensible lot. I feel like I've noticed with Americans, they're kind of like, the government's telling us to do something, but we're going to question that. Where Australians are more like, oh, our government told us to do something, we should do it.
I just gotta remind everyone, yeah, that's kind of like how our Declaration of Independence was formed, because they were telling us to pay taxes, and we're like, no, screw that. So that's definitely the Americans. See, that's the positive and the negative about that spirit. Where if we had a dictator and then we're like, no, we're not going to go along with it. But if we actually have people saying, hey, there's scientific proof that if you wear a mask, you'll be fine, and then you have people saying, no, it infringes on our rights and stuff like that. It's a double-edged sword for sure. Yeah.
I know. I love that about the American people, and I love that questioning ability.
But
Like,
there
I
are
like,
some circumstances where you're just like, just shut up and listen, basically. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas here in Australia, like, and I mean, we question things too. Like, I'm just being being silly.
It's just
But
more
like,
of I know, but it's more part of the national identity here, where that's just our heritage, kind of, basically. Yeah.
yeah. So I know that our government was real. Like, they took it super serious from the get go. And they started warning. Like, they did a lot of public announcements. Like, every morning they do a briefing on the news and stuff like that, so everyone kind of gets the same message. And I think that's probably something that's helped our country a lot, is that the same message has come from our governments and our state premiers, and it's all been very united. And I think that's really been a big plus for us, because we sort of stopped the travellers coming back, because I think our ministers knew that was going to be an issue. So it didn't take off like it did in America. But that being said, people are getting complacent now. So we did have lockdowns, like, right at the start. So I think maybe Well, it was a week. I think it was about 10 days before the Arnold Classic. So it would have been early March. We were told we would be locked down, and we could go out for like shopping and essential services, same thing as you guys. Um, we didn't have to wear masks or anything like that, but we just had to like pretty much stay at home. I've been working from home. I work for government, and I've been working from home. Most people were working from home. So that kind of stabilized our numbers. But now people have got very complacent again. And so now, and people are starting to question now. They're like, oh, but, is this, you're infringing on our rights, and we want to go and do this and we want to go and do that. So we have had a bit more of an outbreak in Victoria now. So if I was in Victoria, I don't think I would be as happy because they're shut down again. So they were only open. They've only been, since it all started, they've only been open. They were open for about 2.5 weeks, the gyms and the clubs and things. And now they've all been closed down again in the city. The regional Melbourne areas are okay, but the Melbourne itself is shut down again. Out where I am and in New South Wales, our borders are closed. I think between Victoria and New South Wales, the border is closed. You can't come. But we're still allowed to go out daily. They're still encouraging us to do only the essential stuff. But I'm in a regional area, so life's pretty normal. I can still go get a coffee. I can still sit in a shop and have my coffee or have lunch. But there's only a certain amount of numbers and things like that. So it's not too bad.
Well, I will say enjoy that because we had a 2-month lockdown here where it was just me sitting at home, and I went back in with my parents after I had my bout with the coronavirus, just because I knew that like, hey, it's safe for me now. I won't get it again. But now they're saying I might. It's a whole conundrum. But the one positive thing about being in Minnesota is, because for anyone out there who's not from the U.S., Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes, because we literally do have 10,000 lakes in our state. It's actually like 18,000, so I don't know why they call it 10,000. So like, the basketball team, the LA Lakers, they were originally from Minnesota, and that's why they got the name the Lakers. But then when they moved to LA, they kept the name, even though there are no lakes in Los Angeles, which is really funny. So that's the thing we always give them crap for. So that's literally like, so that's basically similar to like if it would be like the Minnesota koala bears, basically. We're like, well, there are no koala bears in Minnesota, so it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, that's that. So a lot of people have cabins that they go to, and that's really the only thing that people are doing now. But yeah, just social distancing and everything. It's really, really crazy. And, let's be honest, Americans, we tend to have more of an obesity problem than a lot of other countries too. So when it comes to people that are at higher risks, you see a lot more of that all the time. I mean, I have an aunt who has MS that's in a long-term care facility where we're not going to be able to see her for probably at least another year, just because she gets it, she's done. So,
Yeah.
they've been on lockdown there. But yeah, it's just so fascinating. But when the gyms were locked down and shut down, how are you dealing with that mentally? Because I mean, knowing bodybuilders, working out is a very essential part of your life. So when they say essential work, that is essential work for bodybuilders. Mentally, how are you dealing with that? And did you have a setup at your house or any place that you could go to so that you could, release all that tension and anxiety that you had?
Thankfully, yes. Oh my God, I'm so lucky. It was strange. Like a few months before it all happened, I started getting things for my home gym. Like I was just like, oh, a treadmill came up and I purchased that. And, oh, a squat rack came up and I was like, oh, I might just get that and put it in the garage. And I had just been buying little things, not with any plan of actually working out too much. And I didn't even know why I was doing it, because it was like, I don't know, it was strange. But it all, I'm so glad I did now, because I had some really good equipment at home that I could use. And I also PT'd out of a studio. So once we were allowed to have 10 people again, I was able to go back to that studio because I have a key for it. So I would just go in there by myself and train. And there was only like 2 or 3 of us that had a key. So we were really lucky, and we actually did go and see the police and make sure that was okay. But they were saying, because of the rules of like one person could come and visit your house, you could go visit. They said if you want to go to your studio by yourself, that's okay. So I was really, really blessed. I didn't really miss a lot of training, but during so the last week, actually, it was after the announcement was made that the show wasn't going ahead. I injured myself the very next day. So COVID could not have come at a better time in to be perfectly honest, because it allowed me time to rehab that injury. And yeah, so what I had at home was perfect for it, like, because I didn't need the heavy weights because I was injured. So
What did you injure?
well, okay, so I don't know what part of me I injured, but I ended up with really bad sciatica, and I'm not sure if it was my QL that I pulled. I think I did it on partial deadlift, so I was really pushing one like right towards the end, and I think to be honest, I probably had to crank the crankies a little bit that
She
day.
she was rage lifting after she figured out it was canceled. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, we've all been there. We've all been there where I've been really really angry, and I was like, I'm gonna go for some PRs today because I know I can probably do it.
I was, oh, that's, yes, you've hit the nail on the head. I was just like, oh my God, I was so cranky, and I was just like, I'm going to do partial deadlifts and, you know, really heavy, and, because I felt I was feeling really good last prep. I felt so amazing through the whole thing. And it was also such a dream prep. I was like, what? And yeah, so I think I did it that day. So I did those deadlifts, and I felt my back was a bit twingy, and I kept going. Mistake number one. And then I decided that when I finished, I was warm, so I felt fine. I felt absolutely fine. My back was fine. And then I thought, wow, I just feel so good, and I might just go and do some plyometrics, which was really dumb. So the next day, I woke up and my hip on one side was just killing me, and I was like, oh, that feels weird. And my glute was really sore, and I just had like a bunch of stuff going on that side, and then it just started going down my leg, and I've never experienced pain like it. Honestly, sciatica would have to be the worst form of pain that you can like experience, like for an injury for me, because I haven't had a lot of injuries in my life. I was very sooky about it too, but I've never had that pain. I have never had pain like that, and I would not have wished it on my worst enemy.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I guess you did luck out then. If that must have been probably one of the worst 2 days of your life, though. You figure out it gets canceled, then you get hurt the next day. But hey, it's just
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
fast. Yeah.
yeah. It was a really, really hard 2 weeks, to be honest, because I felt like the injury lasted for about 6 to 8 weeks. It was and I knew it would because I went and saw the guy that I normally see.
Well, especially being that you were at like the best shape of your life too, and then you get injured, so you can't even maintain that really. Then we gotta take it off. So you're like, okay, I'm just gonna slowly watch this fade away. Then basically too. That's
It
the
was
worst. Yeah.
so hard. The first couple of weeks I was just like in such a terrible state. Like, I was just really sad, and just I couldn't shake it. Because I was in so much pain as well, I was just like, you said to my mum one day, I rang her in tears, and I was like, I can't deal with this. Like I said, I'm in so much pain right now. And I didn't want to take ibuprofen because of the coronavirus, because everyone was like, don't take ibuprofen. And I didn't know if that was true or not. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I was just taking Panadol and trying to rub like deep heat and things like that into my back. And um, yeah, I actually invested in a percussion gun, and it's been a lifesaver. So I'm not really experiencing anything like that now. It took about 6 weeks for it to heal, but I did all of the right things. I rehabbed it. After I kind of had that initial couple of weeks where I was pretty down and I couldn't do much, then I just really focused on my rehab, and yeah, and just slowly got better.
Well, being that you're doing online training as well, I mean, this is the perfect question for you because I've always said that there are so many people out there that want to get in shape. They just don't have the tools as to how to do it. I mean, if you were to poll the general public that, might want to lose a couple pounds, yeah, I want to do it. I just don't know how to be able to maintain it. And especially during this pandemic where, you're not going to be going outside that much. You're not going to be doing that much. You have all the time in the world for especially a lot of people that have either been furloughed or that, they're working at home. They can still find some time. So I always say this is the time to basically get started if you want to, because you have the time to do it. What advice do you have for people that are just, they're just stuck in their houses all the time and they're just wondering what to do? I mean, it's like, yeah, you can get a workout in, but so many people just don't know how to get started, especially when it's just at their home. What would you say to someone if they said, like, hey, I really want to get started during this because I have all this free time?
Yeah. Look, honestly, this is the perfect time. I've seen so many people that I knew were really inactive before, and they're like leaning out, they're looking amazing, and they're doing it, because they've got a routine. So the most important thing is to set a routine, and it's to plan your week. So if you know, for example, that you're working from home and you start at 9 a.m., then you've got, like, from, maybe if you wake up at 6 o'clock, you've got until 9 a.m. to get one, even if it's just 30 minutes of a walk or a body weight workout. My biggest piece of advice to people would just be just do something every day, whether it's a walk, whether it's just stretching, and online now, there's so many free resources. There's so many gyms that are doing free workouts that you can access. So there's coaches like myself that are all online. There's so much help out there. But even if you just Google a body weight workout and you just start out doing, like, even if it's 10 minutes, a 10-minute body weight workout, and just, focus on doing that every day and being consistent with that. Or if it's a walk, do the walk every day. Definitely getting outside and getting that sun on you, that natural vitamin D. I mean, that will really help your mindset too, because I feel like that's the biggest thing for people to overcome in isolation or when they're locked down. It's just the mental and emotional impact of not being able to do the things that we normally take for granted. And it really impacts on people's mental health a lot. So I think focusing on what you do have control over, which is you do have control over going for a walk outside. No one's saying, there's a bar on your front door and you can't get out. So, focus on the things that you do have control over and that you can do, and try and just get yourself a little routine.
Well, and I mean, I even tell my friends that when they talk about, like, if I ever tell them that I'm feeling a little lonely or something, and they say, like, oh, you do a podcast, you talk to people all the time, how are you feeling lonely? And I always say, really? Talking to someone face to face? I mean, it's great that we're talking right now, but it's not like you're sitting right next to me, basically, and we're having a conversation. So I totally understand that. And getting out in the sunlight, I mean, I'm in my room a lot, editing these podcasts or, going over with guests, scheduling stuff. So yeah, I could not say that enough. And, walking's been a big thing that I've taken up too as well, where, I have so much free time where I'll even walk for, like 100 minutes, just at a really slow pace, just because, and I'll watch a movie just the whole time I'll do it. I'll get like 7 or 8 miles done. And then, it's just, I mean, that's definitely one way that I can really think that we can really, help pass time and also, get in shape. I mean, there's nothing better than walking, especially when comes to get started, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I believe it. I do it myself. Like, I still walk every day, even though I'm, a competitor or a bodybuilder. I still truly believe that walking outside and just getting that natural sunlight on you, it's so beneficial. And more for the mind than anything else. Like, I think, if we're focusing always on the external and how we're looking, that can kind of get us down a little bit. But if you start to focus on, okay, well, what's walking going to do for me? It's going to make me feel better because I'm going to be outside in the sunlight, just hearing the birds, even just seeing people, right? Like, when you're inside all the time by yourself, you just don't see other people's faces. Like, you just don't observe things, where you're outside, there's stimulus, there's a bird flying, or there's a car driving past, or there's people walking in front of you, or there's people in a park sitting down and talking, and you just, there's different stimulus. So, super important.
I mean, I cannot describe enough like how weird that is, where I mean, we took all that stuff for granted, and now that isn't happening now, it just feels so I mean, but like even just like walking down the street, even like 6 months ago, wouldn't I mean take that for granted all the time. But now, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
so different. But I mean, before we just get into that, because that's a whole tangent. I mean, we'll be talking here for the next 10 hours if we keep talking about coronavirus. But we're going to talk about, because I mean, you are a figure competitor, and like you said, figure competitors don't get that much media as they should, as opposed to, the physique competitors or the bikini competitors or the bodybuilders. But there's also a new division now, wellness, and I have heard that some of the first shows that they had were in Australia for the wellness division. What is your opinion on the wellness division, and were there did you ever have any considerations maybe about going into it, or what's your whole thoughts on that whole new division?
Yeah, look, I think it's, it's a double-edged sword again. So, as a figure competitor, I can see that our figure competing is going in a direction where we're getting harder, we're getting more muscular, and I worry about where that ceiling is going to. And I keep wondering about that too, because I'm sort of like, well, we've now introduced another category because we want another thing in between. It's like, but why can't we just keep figure where it's been over the last few years? And I'm not saying anything negative about the girls who are winning or anything like that. We're obviously the women who are winning right now, we're all just trying to give the league the look that we're being told to. So but for me, having striated glutes as a female is really hard. It's really hard. And it was something that when I was first starting out was seen on the physique girls, but not necessarily on the figure girls. So I've noticed that that's changed quite a lot. And now it seems to be being rewarded, like that really striated glutes, huge separation. So I do like wellness for that reason, because I feel like it's just that little step back. And I really like the look of it. I like the girls with the bigger legs and maybe not necessarily so capped up top, but and I'm actually prepping a girl for a wellness competition at the moment, and I love her figure, I love her shape, and I think it'll do well. I think it will do well. I love the bikini girls too. Like, they're so little and tiny, and I love them too. But I just worry, for us bigger girls. Like, where's our place? Where are we fitting in now? Yeah. And I know that mainstream people in the general population, they're probably going to look at wellness and really like that look, because it's a little bit more achievable for them. So I think it's a good thing, but I just, as a figure girl, it's kind of like, what about us?
Well, I was just thinking this because I'm a middle child myself. So do you think that with figure, it's kind of like the middle child thing, where because you're just in the middle of two extremes, really, when it comes to, I mean, bikinis, they look great, but let's be honest, they don't have the muscle. But then physique, you're like, oh my God, they're just. Do you think that's because figure's just right in the middle, that it might not be getting as much attention just because they're not on either side of the extremes, really?
Well, yeah, and I think that's probably just going to continue too, because the more categories we get, the categories just don't get the same level of scrutiny. But I mean, I loved the era of people like Corey Everson, and I loved those. To me, that really athletic frame, which is, and I guess, as a competitor myself, you kind of are drawn to what you feel you could emulate or what you could look like. For me, I've always been a really naturally athletic girl. I've always had really broad shoulders, a little waist, and then kind of like a curvaceous hips. So for me, the era of Corey Everson, and even, the Erin Stearns, the Nicole Wilkinsons, I loved that look, and I tried to emulate that look. Whereas now, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if I can emulate the look that's kind of, being rewarded now, because I would be one of the tallest female competitors like that's around right now, because I'm 176 centimeters, and most of our winners, they're quite smaller girls, and they can get really thick. They can look really thick. Where I was I think I'm the same height actually as Erin Stern, and we're a little bit longer and not as thick. So yeah, you just kind of wonder, where it's, you know, where your place is, I guess. So, but figure changes all the time. Figure, there's been different kind of looks rewarded and over the years. So who knows? Like it might go back to being a little softer, or I sort of feel like it's maybe one year it's a little harder, and then the next year it's a little softer. And I know they tried to rein us back in a couple of years ago. They wanted everyone to be a little bit softer, and then noticed that it kind of got a little bit harder again, and then maybe it'll swing back and go back to being a little bit softer. I'm not sure. Yeah, all we can do as competitors is try and listen to the feedback, and try and bring the packages that we feel look best on our frame.
Well, and for anyone, if anyone saw me looking down at my phone, I was just typing in what 176 centimeters is in feet, because again, being an American, so that is 59.291. So they're really getting specific on my phone that I have here. So yeah, that is fairly tall. Again, I am 6'3", so I understand your height concerns when it comes to that. And yeah, that's just, I mean, yeah, with figure, who knows? Because like I said, I mean, there's that funny quote where, I mean, as soon the time that figure started, it's basically what bikini is now, and then physique is basically what figure was then. So it's just
And I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I kind of, even within the industry, and other podcasts will talk about the figure girls, and they talk about the figure girls being really hard, and they talk about, oh, they're getting too big, but it's like, well, stop rewarding the big girls then. So,
yeah.
like we're only competitors. We're just trying to, if we see a woman on stage that's won, then of course the rest of us go, okay, well, that's the look that's being rewarded, and we need to look, we need to try and emulate that conditioning, or we need to try and put some more size on. And so, and that, like I still haven't made my pro debut. So once I've been on stage with those pros, I'm going to know where I stack up a little bit better in terms of where do I need to go from here. But in general, I think, I hope figure doesn't die. I think figure's a beautiful, beautiful category. I would hate to see it go. And I think it's completely different from wellness, and it's completely different from physique. So I think the introduction of wellness is great, as long as we don't get rid of figure because of wellness. Like, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, because it used to be the thing where if a girl got too big for bikini, she'd go to figure, but now they can just go to wellness. So that's kind of a thing, yeah, where it's a conundrum.
Probably a bit easier leap to make for those bikini girls as well, because, and some girls, we're just more leg dominant. We're just more. I'm the opposite. I've got really broad shoulders and big lats from my swimming background, but some girls are just really, they've just got really great, well-developed legs, but they don't necessarily want to have the big shoulders. They don't want that look. So I think in that the IFBB have done a smart thing by looking at, okay, well, what do young girls want to look like now, and what look are they going for? And they've kind of gone, well, this is a look that they really like, and we're going to introduce this. And I think it's probably, there's other leagues that look has been very popular in, so maybe that's where they've kind of got the idea.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, there'll always be figure, I think, but yeah, it's going to be interesting because, yeah, there's always going to be that type of, physique that, is going to have for figure. But I do agree with you, where wellness, I mean, that adds a lot of questions that I think only time will tell, and, who knows. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, now, granted, when I told you this last time you were on, if we were talking a year from today, if you were to predicted a global pandemic and Australian wildfires, I would have bet my entire life savings against that. So any prediction that we're making right now is completely out the door. Like, no one knows for sure. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your fitness journey? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
Mm, definitely, I would really hope I've made my pro debut by then. I really, really want to make my pro debut. I can't believe how many years I've worked for it, and then for it not to happen, it was just crushing. So I really want that to happen. I just want to, even if I get blown off the stage and I look the worst out of everyone on stage, at least I can say, I did it. I got up there with those amazing women, and oh my God, like I got to stand beside, people like Jessica Reyes Padilla, and, I'd love to stand beside someone like Candice, and these women that I just really look up, Boyana. There's so many that I kind of look up to, and I would just love to be able to stand beside them, even if I look terrible, just to go, look, when I was young, I stood beside these women. And then my business, with my personal online training business, I'm trying to grow that now, and it would be amazing if I could say that in 12 months' time that was doing even better than it is now, and I would love to be able to do that full time. It would be amazing. But yeah, we'll just wait and see what happens. But yeah, they're probably my two major things, that do my pro debut. And I'd love to travel. I'd really love to be traveling, like, for shows overseas as well. I had it all planned, and I actually had some shows kind of lined up to do over in the States. So I would love to just be able to go over for, a couple of months, and just do a few shows.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just great. And I gotta say though, if you are coming to the States, people don't talk about this that much. Canada though, I went up to Banff in Canada, in Calgary. The most beautiful place I've ever seen in my entire life. They have the waters there where it's like the water's like light blue, and then you're like right by mountains, and it's, oh my God, it's beautiful. But yeah, I don't know if I told you this before. My family is like the biggest baseball family of all time. You can see those rally monkeys back there from all the Major League Baseball stadiums that I've been to, where I collected them. So I have been to every part of the country except the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest. So every other part I've literally been to, because we'd go and watch baseball games there. But yeah, it's definitely, I mean, exploring too. Yeah, that's something that I'd really, really enjoy. And for any of our Australian listeners, I'll leave a link down below for all of her stuff for coaching. If you want any advice, or if you just want any advice, or just they're looking for a coach, I'll leave her info down below for that. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely weird times that we're in right now. But Rose, I mean, I cannot thank you enough for coming back on and talking. Always, it's the light. And before I wrap it up, though, I do remember that she said that she has a gift for me, everyone. So I'm happy to find out what that is. So Rose, why don't you show everyone what you've got for me, and what I should be expecting? Ooh, Tim Tams.
Tim Tams? Yeah, giant Tim Tams.
Oh,
These are amazing. Have you ever had Tim Tams before?
I haven't had any Australian food in my entire life ever.
Oh, you are gonna love me.
I will
Yeah.
film a video of me eating all this stuff and then send it to you. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Oh gosh, that one.
Oh, yeah. Though hey,
Oh,
I can honestly say you are crossing off something on my bucket list, because it was actually on my bucket list to have Vegemite for one time.
it's going to be on its way today.
Now, fingers crossed that I don't like throw it up as soon as I have it. But hopefully, yeah, no.
I'm going to give you some instructions. I'll write some instructions. Do not take any more of this than you need to take.
I have watched videos on this, and they've said, like, especially for you Americans out there, you put way too much damn Vegemite on your stuff. I've seen people where they think it's like peanut butter and jelly, where they put it on like jelly, and then people are like, this tastes horrible. It's like, because you put like half the thing inside of it.
The trick is you've got to get, fresh bread, toast it.
Yep.
Put so much butter, like the most amount of butter you would ever put on anything, and then just a little scrape, just the tiniest little scrape.
So you're saying I shouldn't just first try it raw?
Oh God, don't do that to yourself. Look, once you get the taste and you acquire the taste, you'll want to eat it like that. You'll just want to get a spoon and eat it like that. But until you get the taste of it, we'll just start you out with small doses first,
That,
and then we'll move up.
well, and that sounds great. And the other thing, the Tim Tams. So is that what is it other than chocolate? Is that anything else in them?
Oh, um, there's like, so they're like a biscuit. I don't know if you can.
Oh, that makes it even better.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they're
can
like,
see. Yep.
they're a chocolate biscuit that's kind of like wafery, but it's like really thick chocolate around the outside. So, and then in the inside, it's kind of like cream chocolate, but wafer as well. But it's not like it's not like a vanilla wafer. It's like chocolate, like chocolatey, biscuity goodness.
Oh my God.
And I'll also tell you a tip. So what you want to do with your Tim Tam is you want to like bite off one edge and then the opposite edge. So they're like a triangle. You bite one edge, the other edge. You get a cup of tea or coffee, whatever you like, and then you suck the tea through the Tim Tam, and it just melts in your mouth. It is amazing.
You want to hear something crazy? So being an American, I've had tea once in my entire life.
I forget this. I was listening to a podcast the other day,
Yeah.
and they were talking about, and the guy's like, he had an English person on, and you know, in Australia and in England, tea is huge, but in England, tea is life.
Yep.
Tea is like.
So one of my ex-girlfriends, she would have tea a lot, and I even told her, I was like, "What are you, British?" Basically, and I was like, "I don't have tea." So that's the one time I tried tea, and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I'd rather just have plain water, basically." But you know, and so as you can tell, I'm actually a hyper person, so I've only had coffee a handful of times in my life too. So I'm gonna have to figure out something. I might have to get like a diet cola or something like that, and you know, put that, or I'll figure out something.
Do you like hot chocolate?
Oh hell yeah! Okay, hot chocolate then, yeah. I'm in Minnesota. When it's negative 40 degrees, hot chocolate is life. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that, basically. But oh yeah, so that'll have to do. Yeah, hot chocolate. But yeah, with tea, yeah, I just don't get it. And since we're talking about this, I always find it so funny. We're like, you're from New South Wales. Why people, when they first got to a place, they decided, oh, we're just gonna call it New South Wales as opposed to South Wales. Just like how when I think about like New York or New Jersey, they're just like, oh, we're just gonna call it New Jersey. It's just like it's the same town. It's like when you really think about it, because like New York is like the biggest city in the world, but you're really, when you think about it, let's just name it after York, England, and just call it New in front of it, just to let people, oh, it's the New York. So yeah, so New. I just find that funny, and that's with a lot of former British colonies. They tended to have that too. But yeah. So
they liked things to be named after them. Where I'm from. Originally, like the original town that I'm from is called Tottenham, and there's like
Tottenham Hotspur, yeah,
it's named after like a place in Britain. And yeah, I never knew that growing up. I was like, oh, and then I realized that there was Tottenham over in America, and there's a Tottenham in Victoria as well. So there's a New South Wales, a Tottenham in New South Wales, a Tottenham in Victoria, a Tottenham in Britain, a Tottenham in the US.
There's probably one in Canada. Let's be honest, because that's another former. But yeah, because I remember I played FIFA, and that was one of the teams that you could play for is Tottenham Hotspur. So as soon as you said Tottenham, I was like, oh yeah, that's named after that. So yeah, it's just, I mean, my town of Bloomington. I mean, that was named after a town in Indiana. That was named after a town in blah blah blah. But I'm surrounded by a lot of Minnesota is like the home to the largest Scandinavian. So I'm like half Norwegian and then like almost the other half German mixed with a little bit of like Irish and Italian. But so we are in the where you're gonna have a lot of like New Ulms or like Brunswick or stuff like that where it's yeah. So it's. But again, before we get in, because honestly, I could talk to Rose for like 10 hours. Everyone, we could have a whole new topic. We could have her on weekly, and we could share new topics just because she's so great to talk to. But it is 10 o'clock. It is 10 o'clock right now where I'm at right now, and I am even I might even do a little bit of cardio before I go to bed now because I am a night owl by heart. But again, Rose, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and talking. And honestly, if it was just for your accent alone, just the talking alone, where it's just like it's my ears melt basically anytime she says a word. So it's for me. It was like getting an ear massage basically the whole time that she was talking. So yeah, I could have her on any day of the week. But again, Rose, thank you so much for coming on.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me back on, and thank you for covering us ladies. It's, so nice to have a podcast that's interested in what we girls have to say. There's so many like bodybuilding podcasts for guys, right?
That
But
well,
not a lot
that's what I
for girls.
figured too. Well, that's what I figured too, because when I was getting started, so like I had no intention when I got started. Because if people look at my history, my first like 100 podcasts were up and coming bands and musicians, and that was going to be my thing. Where I was like, my dream is like one of these bands is going to ask me like, hey, you want to come on the road and like video what we're doing? That was my dream starting this, and then all of a sudden, like I had that background in health and fitness where I started to ask some people on, and then I looked around, and I was like, there's no podcast for the ladies really when it comes to body. At least when I started like 2 years ago, so I was like, huh. And there's a market for that because I've been following a lot of them basically like since high school. So that's why it got started. And then, I've had a few guy bodybuilders on, but like I've said before, this is the only conversation that guys really have when they talk about health and fitness. Hey bro, how much you lift? That's
Yeah,
and that's it.
I
That's
know.
it. So women tend to be better at conversation than men in anyway, and just in overall life. So I figured that, but it's my pleasure to have the ladies on and talk about their journey because let's be honest, they go through so much more than the men when it comes to, I mean, especially like with prep, with the effects that it has on your body and stuff. Like I had some hormone specialists on a few podcasts ago, and you know, I even told her, I was like, I didn't even know that males had hormones basically. Like, because for us it's just like, oh, we don't care about it. Where it's like someone's like, oh, you gotta go get your hormones checked. I'd be like, haha, yeah, no, I won't.
Yeah, it's and like for us girls, it is because it can affect how lean we can get, how even just the stress hormones that we go through, and just our cycles and things like that. So yeah, absolutely, it is really tough for females, and we work really really hard, and not to say that we work any harder than the guys. The big boys work just as hard, but it's nice, they've got lots of forums to be kind of talked to and explored on, whereas us girls was kind of like, oh, we're here too. Like, does anyone care about what we're doing?
Yeah, and
So
anything I can do to help. Yeah, it's more than willing. Well, I couldn't think of a better way to end this podcast, Rose. I know that you might be a little off season, but can we see the abs because they are, even though when you
oh,
lean down, they are some of the best that we've seen. So just give us a shot.
wow,
Yeah,
God, you could have warned me you want to see the abs.
could have warned you. See, that's okay. That's not even. I got to go on the treadmill now. Yeah, I got to go. I'm gonna go
Oh,
run for forever. I mean, I put on a little bit of quarantine weight before. I'm not gonna lie, just because I had like 2 months where I worked out only a couple times. But yeah, I couldn't think of a better way to end it. And again, Rose, thank you again so much, and everyone. This is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.